This video is to show you how to install new wheel bearings using the Tokyo Offroad wheel bearing press tool. To check whether you need new wheel bearings, there's an easy test you can perform. First, put your bike on a lift stand so the wheel's raised off the ground, and then grab the wheel, top and bottom, and try and rock it to and fro. So if you can detect any free play, it indicates that the wheel bearings are worn and need replacing. A KTM off-road bike like this, the front wheel bearing should last a couple of years if you're using it every weekend, and the rear wheel bearings probably won't last as long, maybe a year of use. But it's still a good idea to check for bearing play, particularly if you're running in very wet conditions and getting a lot of water inside the bearings. They can wear out a lot quicker. To remove and install bearings, it's important to heat the hubs so damage to the hub is minimized. So I use this gas source. You can use some MAP gas if you've got that as well, but you don't have to get it really hot, so a gas source like this is fine. You also need some way of removing the old bearings. There's two methods which I'm going to show in this video. The lowest cost solution is just to use a piece of steel rod like this and hammer them out carefully. So I'll show how to do that. But really the best way is to use a bearing puller. So I have this kit with various sizes. For the rear wheel you'll need a 25mm bearing puller, and for the front ones you need 30mm. To remove the dust seals you'll need a flat bladed screwdriver. A large one is easier to use. And for the rear wheel it has a circlip on the brake side, so you need some circlip pliers. The ones I have are made by Nipex and they work extremely well, so I recommend those if you're going to buy some new ones. The model and the number is 4811J2, and it says they're suitable for 19 to 60mm circlips. They work very, very well. And then for the install you're obviously going to need some bearings. This is a repair kit made by KTM, and it includes the bearings, the dust seals, spacers, and also an internal spacer. And if you think you're going to need to replace all of these parts, then one of these kits is probably the best deal. This particular kit is for the front wheel, but they also make rear wheel kits. On the other hand, if you only intend to replace the bearings and the dust seals, then you might be better off buying them individually online. So these are some seal bearings made by SKF, and SKF also makes some nice dust seals, which are shown here, or you could buy the OEM dust seals. But as I say, if you think you need to replace the spacers and the internal spacer, then the kit probably works out a bit cheaper. One tip I have for installing the new bearings is to put the bearings in the freezer for about probably a minimum of an hour. And by doing that, the external diameter becomes slightly smaller and they install a lot easier and minimize the chance of damage. So I recommend before you start anything, put them in the freezer, and then probably when you're ready to install, they should be cool enough. And to install the new wheel bearings, I'm going to be using the Tokyo Offroad wheel bearing press tool. This can be used for both front and rear wheel bearings. Just by flipping this part of the tool round, it'll fit both 25 and 30mm internal diameter bearings. The wheel bearing press tool comes with two nuts, two washers, a threaded rod, a base, which you can tell by the threaded section, and the press plate, which the bearing fits on. Before you use it, you need to assemble the base with the threaded rod. So just assemble it like that. And you want to get the rod so it's not quite flush with the base, and then do the nut up. I recommend, if you're going to leave it assembled, use some thread lock on this so it doesn't come loose. If you want to take it apart each time, you'll just have to tighten it with a wrench, and then it's ready for use. So to remove the wheel bearings, you're going to want to rest the wheel on something. So I'm going to use this tire and rest it on top. If you don't have a tire, you'll have to figure out something else, some wood blocks or something, or if you've got a tire changing stand you can use that. For this demonstration I'm just going to put it on top of this tire. And the first thing you want to remove is the wheel spacers. These come out pretty easily. If you've got a piece of bar which fits down through them, you can just feel the edge. Don't hammer really hard because you can damage the spacers. So you just want to do it gently and tap from side to side. And it should pop out fairly easily like that. And then flip the wheel out and remove the other wheel spacer. So the same thing, just tap from side to side and it pops out. Once you have the wheel spacers removed, you need to remove the dust seals, and you can use a flat bladed screwdriver to remove them. So push in and then pry up, and you can work around and it pops out fairly easily. And then flip it over and remove the other dust seal. On the KTM OEM rear wheels, there's a circlip on the brake side, which I think you can see here. So be sure to remove this before trying to remove the bearing. So to remove the circlip, simply insert your circlip pliers into the holes and pressing down, squeeze together and then lift out the circlip. Once you've removed the circlip, the next step is to heat the hub up in this area. You don't need to get it very hot, probably aim for about 50 degrees C or so. Once it's hot, flip the wheel out and then you can remove the bearing. So I'm going to use the bar to drive it out, so I need to flip the wheel over in this. Then take the bar, and there's a spacer internally which you need to push over slightly, so you can tap it over, and so you can get the bearing face with the bar, and then tap the bearing. And don't do too much at one time, go from side to side. Side to side. And that's the bearing out. So important thing, go side to side. Don't just hammer down on one side or you'll damage the hub. Next I'm going to show how to use the bearing puller. It comes with all different size attachments for different bearings. In this case, for the rear wheel, I'm going to use the 25mm part, and the basic setup is like this. There's two arms which rest on the hub, and this part goes inside the bearing, and then you tighten this up, which splays these parts out and grips the bottom part of the bearing, and then you pull it out by screwing this. So I'm going to set the tool up for the hub and then show how to pull the bearing out. Once you've selected the correct attachment, in this case for the rear wheels you need a 25mm one, install this part which splays apart the puller and hand tighten it. And then the puller itself, you need to adjust the arms so they sit on the hub but don't interfere with the bearing when it's being pulled out. So you can see here I've got a little bit of clearance each side with the bolt in the middle. And once you've done that, you can thread it on just to get it started a little bit, and then drop that down inside. And the next step is to tighten this part up so it splays out the puller and grips the bottom part of the bearing. Okay, so I've got wrenches on the bottom part and the top nut, and I'm going to start tightening it up. And it shouldn't need a lot of tightening, just need to splay it apart And I think that's probably enough. Yeah, it's gripping it pretty well now. And just make sure the arms are aligned correctly on the hub so they won't interfere. Once you've adjusted the bearing puller, apply some heat to the hub before you pull the bearing out. Okay, I think that's enough. And then you simply tighten this nut while holding the bolt and it pulls the bearing straight out. So this method you stand less chance of damaging the hub, although it obviously does take a little bit more time to set the puller up. And the bearing's almost out now. You can see it pulls it out nice and straight. Okay, and that's it. And if I turn it over, you can see how it grips the bottom side of the bearing. Once you have both bearings out, be sure to inspect for any damage inside the hub. If there is damage, you should consider what you're going to do. If it's really bad, you might have to replace the hub. If it's a scratch, it's probably okay. But if there is play between the hub and the bearing, it's not good, especially if it can rotate. And then clean out the bearing where the bearing sits with some parts cleaner and a cloth. You definitely want to make sure there's no dirt or sand or anything like that which could interfere when you're installing the new bearings. I'm going to flip the wheel over and clean the other side as well. So now I've removed the old bearings and cleaned up the hub, I'm ready to start installing the new bearings. So take the plate off the bearing press tool, and take a note that there's two sides of this plate. So the smaller side is for the rear bearings, the larger size is for the front bearings. So you put those aside and then take your wheel, and I'm going to be installing the disc side bearings first. So you want the disc up and put it over the press tool. Make sure it's seated correctly with the threaded part in the center. And then the first step you want to do is heat up the hub. Enough. And then get your bearing out of the freezer. I've just taken this bearing out of the freezer, and if you carefully look at the bearing, on one side it has the model number, and on the other side there's nothing. So the side with the writing on should be facing out, and be sure that you do it that way. I think it's shaped slightly differently so it can press in easily. So with the writing on the top side, position your bearing in the middle, and then take the bearing plate and make sure it fits inside the bearing. And then put the washer on and the nut, and hand tighten that. And then you'll need your socket, so you need a 19mm socket, and you can start pressing in the bearing. And it should go in relatively easy, and you can see it's pressing in very nicely. Be careful not to over torque it. When it's fully seated, you'll feel a sudden change, and I've just felt it there, so I'm going to stop there. And then you can remove the tool. And you see the bearing is fully seated there. If you weren't using this tool, you'd be using a socket or something similar and hammering it in. And you can find it very easy to get the bearing canted and damage the hub. So using a press like this is a much better idea. And then don't forget to reinstall the circlip over the bearing. And make sure it seats correctly to hold the bearing in place. Once you've installed the disc side bearing and circlip, you're ready to install the sprocket side bearing. So flip the wheel over, and with the sprocket up, put the hub onto the bearing press tool. Make sure it's sitting squarely with the threaded section in the middle of the hole. And you want to put the internal spacer in. Make sure there's no dirt on it or grit or anything. It just drops down there. Make sure it's seated correctly. And this keeps this side bearing correctly spaced. So it's important you put that back in. Then you want to heat up the hub. That's enough, and then grab your bearing from the freezer. And then note the markings on the bearing, so you want the markings up, and then center the bearing. And then with the bearing press tool, make sure you choose the correct size and make sure it's seated correctly in the bearing. Put the washer on and nut, and then grab your socket, and you can start pressing the bearing in. And you can see it goes very easily in, nice and straight. And then when it's seated, you'll notice a sudden change. And it's there, so just stop there, and then you can take the press tool off, and that is the install of the bearings complete. So now you just need to install the dust covers and the spacers. So I'm going to be using this SKF wheel seal kit. It's meant to be better than OEM, keep water out better, and I'm going to actually use the Tokyo Offroad wheel bearing press tool to install these. So with the wheel on the wheel bearing press tool, get your seal, and these SKF seals, they have a metal side and a rubber side. And the rubber side goes inside, so you want the metal side out, so it goes this orientation. With a stock seal, it's got the metal bit, and if you look inside, it's just open there, so the open part goes inside. So whichever type you use, make sure you get it the right orientation. So I'm using these SKF ones, and then you get the press tool plate, position it over, and then put your washer and nut on, and then you can just press it on in the same way you pressed on the wheel bearing. This should go in very easily. Also, you don't need a lot of force, so make sure you don't overdo the torque. So that's good, and then you can undo it. and then you just flip the wheel over and do the other side. And the last step is to smear some grease around and put your wheel spacers in. And that's it. So using this tool, it allows you to install the wheel bearings very easily, minimizing damage to the hub.